Hey, welcome to the 8 a.m. Coffee Podcast. I'm Asher. I've got Paul with me, and we have a special guest today. This is Mark McKinney. How's it going over there, Mark?
Good man, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm awake. Doing good.
You and me both.
I did want to tell everyone also that we have started up a Patreon page, as many people do who have podcasts and things, but we're trying to do something special with it right now. And if you do decide to donate even as little as $1, we're going to give 50% of everything to Second Harvest Food Bank. So I'm going to post a link to that down here, and we're all going to share the feed. And then, Mark, will you
What
tell us? Yeah.
what is Patreon? I know we're trying to get to Mark really quickly, but like what is Patreon? Like I have never heard of it in my life.
Yeah, you
So
need to go check it out then because we have one now. So Patreon is this thing for really any creative person who is creating content. Like if you make videos, if you make podcasts, people can donate money to you to keep you going and get exclusive things. Like let's say they give like $10 a month. It's like a monthly subscription kind of thing. And then you can make some cool stuff depending on the different tiers of giving. So for us, there's not a whole lot of like crazy cool stuff, but at the moment, if you're giving like $5, we give you a shout out. If you give if you give $100, we're going to give you a 5-minute segment live on the podcast, and we'll talk about whatever
if
you
you
want as
if,
long as it's PG.
if you give $100, I'll fire up the truck and bring it up to your house and cook at this point.
That's a lot.
Hmm.
Let's not make that a promise, but
No,
we'll
let's
talk.
not.
We'll
Let's
talk.
not.
So Mark,
So Mark,
Yes,
what do you do?
morning.
What's your name? What's your sign?
Uh, Mark McKinney, I'm a Virgo. Um, so what I do currently, I am unemployed as of about 3 weeks ago, but
Gotcha.
prior to that, um, so Paul and I'm on here because I know Paul and I've been watching you guys and jumped in on a thread a little bit, and then Paul and I messaged, but I was a chef here in the Knoxville area and other areas for about 29 years. Still in the industry. The reason why now I call myself a culinarian, I guess, because I don't cook professionally anymore. The reason for that is about 4 years ago, I was feeling pretty sick, kind of going to a lot of doctors, trying to figure out what I had going on, found out I have an autoimmune disease, and through a lot of um, help with functional medicine doctors and just getting on the internet and doing my own research, realized that food was a big issue for me. Makes it very hard to be a professional chef when you have food issues and food sensitivities and things like that. So I moved over to the other side of our industry, which would be more on the distribution and manufacturing side, which is what I've been doing for the last couple of years until the coronavirus decimated our industry. It's killing a lot of the restaurants, especially the small independents. But that whole it doesn't just stop with them, and that's kind of the surprising thing. We used to always say that people have to eat, so you'll always have a job, and it's taken one virus to kind of show us that that's not exactly the case. So now I'm just hanging out at the house, and trying to figure out what the next steps are and see, I guess, how long this thing's going to last. Hopefully, the job will come back. If it doesn't, I'll find something else. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Gotcha. Yeah, Paul has talked about you since the first time you commented on something, and I told him like I'm fascinated by just food in general and the health side of things. So I would really love to hear more about like just what you know about that. I
Sure.
mean, just for me, as basic as possible is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
dude,
And
he is so
Well,
smart when it comes to this. I'm just being flat out about it.
yeah,
So like he really is. So
well,
please.
Thank you. But and I'll preface that by saying that one, I am not a medical professional, and anything that I say, I cannot be held liable for. Everything that I will talk about is based on my own experiences.
Absolutely.
So, I guess to kind of go back a little bit, I'm pushing 50. I've been cooking in restaurants, things like that. I started doing working with food when I was probably 10, 11, 12 years old. My dad was a restaurant manager. And in the summertime, he'd take my brother and I. We were in Arkansas at the time. He worked for a kind of a catfish house type operation called the Hush Puppy. And there's still one or two of them left
Noodling? They
in
go
the
noodling?
world. No, he didn't. No, we weren't. It all came off of a truck. We didn't go
Okay.
find our own. He didn't go
gotcha.
find his own catfish.
What is noodling?
That's when you like find the catfish living down in their holes in the river, and you reach down and you grab them. You basically let them bite you, and then yeah,
Yeah, it's hand fishing.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. No, no. Everything came in boxes already filleted, just kind of like we like to do. But you've given Paul an idea.
Yeah,
No, you have not given me an idea.
He's
You've given me a nightmare.
yeah.
I didn't know this was possible, but okay, yes, noodling, and we're there. You're picking your catfish up.
Yeah. So that's kind of where this whole thing started, and he did that for a while. We ended up moving back up here to Tennessee to Morristown. My mom was from Knoxville, and she wanted to get back here. We bought a little country store. In the back of the country store, we had a deli with a butcher who would bring in whole sides of beef, and I mean, he had the bandsaw and the whole 9 yards going, and I would work in that store. So, I've always kind of done this, but as I got older, got into probably in my late 20s, early 30s, I started having issues with fatigue, things not really feeling quite right. As I got older, it got worse. I spent about 10 years going to my general practitioner, and I go in and say, look, man, something's not right. I don't feel good. I've got all this pressure in my head. I've got, I'm tired all the time, yada, yada, yada. They run all these tests, all of this stuff, and come back and say, there's nothing wrong with you. You need to be on antidepressants. You just need this, you need that. And my thyroid, what I have is Hashimoto's disease. And basically that's when your body attacks the thyroid and destroys it. So my thyroid stopped working when I was a kid. So I'd always been on thyroid medication.
Gotcha.
That was nothing that I didn't know about, but I would go to the doctor, they would check my levels. Oh, your thyroid's fine. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just depressed. You're this, you're that. All these symptoms that you say are in your head are just, depression and this and that and the other. And
wow.
I didn't believe them, and this went on for about 10 years. And then finally, my physician that I had retired. He was an older guy, and he was great. I mean, I liked him a lot. He was a lot of fun, but I think he was just he wasn't really trained in how things were in newer things going on. So I got a new general practitioner, and when he came in, we sat down and talked. He did some tests and things like that, and then he said, he's like, you need to go to an endocrinologist. You need to talk to them. This is a little outside of my wheelhouse. So I went to the endo. That's where I got my diagnosis. And about that same time, I was already kind of going on the internet, looking at different things. And then once I got my diagnosis and he told me I had Hashimoto's disease, I really started deep diving on it, and started reading a lot about food sensitivities, digestion, gut health, things like that. Got hooked up through Knox Foodie, through Eric. He called me and he said, hey, I have a friend who's a functional medicine practitioner. She might be somebody that you would be interested in going and seeing. So initially, when I met with her, we were talking about maybe doing some cooking classes. And then during that meeting, I said, I need to be a patient, because what you're talking about is a whole lot different than what everybody else has been talking about. And so that's really where it all kind of started. So, when you're talking about, and to not get too long into it since I don't really have anything formatted out here and I don't want to jump around too much. But
No, you're good.
what I've found is with autoimmune disease, and there's 80 to 100 autoimmune diseases out there, give or take. I mean, different websites tell you different things, but like the big ones are multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, Hashimoto's, lupus. I mean, there's a whole bunch out there. What they're finding now is all of this stuff kind of starts with gut health, and all of these, while the symptoms are different, the root causes are typically environmental, physiological, digestive. So, that's kind of the route I've taken. Fortunately for me, with the Hashimoto's disease, it's not as, I don't want to say debilitating, but maybe life altering as maybe an MS or something like that. I do have a relative who has MS, and, I don't have any pain. For me, when I have symptoms, it's basically brain fog, lethargy, memory issues, things like that, hard to focus. The easiest way I can describe it to people is it's like a really bad hangover. And it's just pretty consistent. It's constant monitoring. You can kind of get it tweaked in a little bit, and then things change in your body, and you have to, like, I go about every 6 to 8 weeks, maybe 3 months, and have my thyroid tested, and it's always kind of up and down, and we're changing things and doing this and doing that. Actually, yesterday I had my blood work drawn again because I haven't been feeling very good. Waiting for that to come back. So, it's a challenging thing, but at the same time, I also feel like I'm pretty lucky because, there's a lot of people out there that have issues that are a lot worse than mine. But yeah, that's kind of, I think that it was kind of, I laughed a little bit when I got my diagnosis. So I was like, here I am, a chef. This is how I make my living.
Yeah.
And how I make my living is hurting me. So, what am I going to do? How can I do this? And there for a hot minute, and Paul was kind of along for this ride a little bit. I did kind of an autoimmune based meal prep program with a couple of friends of mine here in town. And we did that for about 6 or 7 months. What we found was, with having kind of 3 owners or 3 people that were needing to dig into the pie there, that the scalability of it to make it all financially feasible for all of us was pretty challenging. And, I realized that physically it was going to be way too much on me to be able to continue to do that day in and day out. Especially, I was working full time as a chef, trying to do that on the side, working 7 days a week. It was not killing me, but it was definitely making life pretty hard,
Yeah,
So,
I remember when you stopped doing that, and dude, your quality of life went through the roof.
Yeah.
As soon as you went, this just isn't worth it. Not to bring Corona into it, but that's a big thing that's going on. Like, people are realizing quality of life over income right now. Now, granted, income's important. I'm not trying to get away from that. Not trying to get away from that. Also, leaving the house might be really important as well right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, on the autoimmune thing, it's so crazy how much your diet actually affects you. Just me personally, I've been on a weight loss journey and been really successful this year until this whole thing hit. And then I was like, forget that. I'm going to eat whatever I want. And now my shirts are a little bit tighter again and everything. But I mean, even with Ashley, her voice is like, if she eats the wrong thing, her singing voice goes crazy out there. So, I mean, I don't, when you say autoimmune and diet and things like that, I get where you're going with it, but I don't think it, personal opinion, I don't care if you are liable against me. I don't have anything you can take. So
we'll see, right?
But your diet very, very much, I think, affects absolutely everything in your life. I mean, even on normal, everyday I mean, even when you're like, hey, man, I don't really feel like eating that today. I've just felt so heavy the last few days. I mean,
Yeah.
I've said it before, like, hey, I just want a salad. Like, even when I, wasn't eating healthy or anything, it was, man, I just don't want pizza today. I really want a salad. I want to feel better. And, I mean, like, uh, anyways, it legitimately blows me away because I've seen the transition. I don't want to say that we've known each other for this long, but I'm going on like 24 years right now. 24,
Well,
23.
it was,
I was 18,
yeah,
man.
yeah, because we met at Gettysview.
Yeah, where I was a dirty dishwasher. It was
You were
great.
you were a dirty trash can diving dishwasher.
And then I would come in and like try to do everybody's work.
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
would.
But that was 97.
96, 97. Yeah. And I only
Yeah,
lasted there like 4 or 5 weeks uh,
yeah,
because old big country over here, as we used to call him, was like, dude, you got to get out of here, man. Like, he's like, you got to leave. Now, no offense to the chef that was there. He's still a local chef, still owns a restaurant. He's a good dude, all that. But he was like, dude, you're never going to go anywhere if you're here.
yeah,
Like, I just need you
yeah.
to know that. And then I don't know if it was you or what. I know you encouraged me to go to Blackberry. I think I was just so annoying that I called John Fleer every day at 10 a.m. for like 2 weeks till he gave me a job. But did it come from you as well? There's no need for a big name culinary school, even though you went to one and it's great. Like, I'm not saying that it's not worth it, but you were like, dude, if you can't afford it, don't
Yeah,
go. Was that
yeah,
you?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, there's been a lot of brain pollution between now and then, but if I remember correctly, I think that, I probably reached out to Fleer at that point and just said, hey, I know this guy, but outside of that, that's the only thing that I had to do with it. But yeah, I've told, I taught up until I went onto this, manufacturing rep gig a couple of years ago. I taught culinary at UT for 10 years part time. I did that for a long time. And some of that was the hobby classes through the personal and professional development department. Some of that was the course that they still do now. It's like a 6-week ACF certification course. A lot of that is military grants and stuff like that. But I would have people come in on the hobby class and be like, I want to go to culinary school and I want to do this and I want to do that. And I'd really get into conversations with them. And most of them would be like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You just do what you do. And I had a guy, I was like, what do you do for a living? He was like, I'm an engineer. I was like, well, I'm not going to ask you how much I make, but I have a pretty good idea how much you make. Can you live on $11 an hour? And I mean, his jaw just about hit the floor. And I was like, don't transition careers, man. Just stay what you're doing. But to get to Paul's point, correct. You don't have to go to a big name culinary school to be a chef. The French Laundry guy. What's
Thomas
his name?
Keller.
Thomas Keller. He never went to culinary school.
What's
Charlie
it, like a
Trotter.
computer programmer or something crazy like that? I can't remember
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't know. I don't think that Thomas Keller went to culinary school.
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
He
So,
didn't. Repair didn't. Bourdain didn't. Um, I mean,
yeah.
Fleer did,
I
but
yeah,
that was after he got a
CIA guy.
master's degree.
Yeah,
So,
he already had a master's from Duke in something completely
Oh wow.
non-related, and
and
and and and then and decided. I don't know the timeline. He was
Mary Tyler Moore's
Mary
personal
Tyler
chef.
Moore's personal chef. Yeah.
Jeez.
See,
Yeah.
I'm not feeling so hot today, so my brain's moving a little
No,
slow.
you're
the
good.
But
the reason I know this is because you may have made that phone call, and I gotta give you that, right? And you may have got me in the door and everything. I just remember him hiring me, and my first day, he told me I wasn't allowed to call his office for 2 months because I legitimately every day at 10 a.m. called him. Every day, 10 a.m., gave him a phone call. And he was like, I knew it was 10 a.m. And he hired me, I think, partially as well, so I would just leave him alone.
yeah,
He never thought I was going to last. I'm going to be flat out. He didn't think I was going to last at all. And I mean, like, it was absolutely one of the funniest, craziest times up in that place ever.
Yeah, I loved it, and it was even, when I got the job there, I went to Johnson and Wales when they were still in Charleston. And the whole reason I even knew about Blackberry Farm, even though I'm from here, I had never even heard of it at that point. Prior to me going to culinary school, I worked in chain restaurants and all of that. And I had a cook who had left and gone to culinary school and would, he'd come back to Knoxville on weekends or breaks or whatever and just talk about how great it was. And I was, I did about a year and a half at Middle Tennessee State straight out of high school and just didn't do very well and was always kind of just working in bars and stuff like that, cooking in kitchens, and just kind of got to that point where I was like 23 years old and was like, all right, I got to do something, man. And my buddy was like, oh yeah, this culinary school thing was great. And it's this, and you learn how to cook and do all this stuff. And so that's kind of where I went down that path. And I chose Charleston because it was close. It was a good school. I wasn't great in high school. So basically, all you had to do was have your check clear and they would let you in. So that was awesome.
Yes, they do.
So I ended up going there. I got a job at Magnolia's, which is where I worked when I was in culinary school. And Donald Berkman, who was the original chef at Mag's and was for a while, he ended up going to Blackberry Farm and did one of those guest chef weekend things. And it was right before I graduated. And so he and I were talking. They offered me a job, not as a sous chef, but more as like a PM supervisor at Magnolia's, if I wanted to stay once I graduated. And I liked Charleston, but it just wasn't really where I wanted to be. And I was like, no, I'm going to go back home. And he was like, well, you're from Knoxville, right? Yeah, I'm from Knoxville. He said, you have to go to Blackberry Farm. I don't care what they pay you. I don't care if you have to have 4 jobs. Yeah. You go to Blackberry Farm and you work. And kind of to your point, Paul, I didn't call him every day, but, I had to call Fleer probably about 6 or 8 times before he would even return my call. And I think that he did that on purpose just because they had so many people calling. To try to get that job.
Trying to see how persistent you're going to be.
Oh, dude, 100%. Dude, we put them through the ringer when they walked through that door, too.
And, so I went up and he finally called me back, went up there. I, staged for a night or two and they brought me on. And, back then, and it was kind of the same for you because, when you went, I hadn't been gone from there that long. Blackberry Farm was not what it is now. I mean, not the quality or anything like that, but just the sheer size of it. I mean, when I was there, we had I think it was a maximum occupancy of 28 people. We had, the old kitchen, the grease trap on the stoves had rusted holes in them, and the walk-in was an old root cellar that you had to hide from the health inspector.
The butcher block table that shifted every time you cut. Did you have that one too?
Absolutely.
Man, that sounds really scary.
Dude, but we're putting out like relay. I don't know if you know what Relais and Chateau is, but Relais and Chateau, like Michelin star rated food out of this kitchen, and it was like, I was like, what are we working in?
Yeah, but I mean, you don't have to have the best equipment to put out great food. You just have to have good staff with passion, and that was the thing that I loved about working there was, it was a small team. I mean, there was literally like 9 chefs in the kitchen. We had 1 full-time baker, a couple of dishwashers, and that was it. You'd walk in the door and they'd be like, okay, the prep list is over on the table. And it was literally a legal pad, handwritten, and you would just put your initials next to what you wanted to prep, and everybody just, jumped in. It was a team atmosphere. Yep. There was not really any kind of egos or anything going on in that place.
That's really cool.
It was awesome. I mean, was the greatest.
Yeah, I mean, to the point of like, if you were in the morning and like line cooks are line cooks, let's just put it out there. And like, if you were hungover, you could call whoever was PM and be like, dude, I need you to work. Or if you were with them the night before, they'd be like, man, I'm going to cover your shift in the morning. And you'd show up and Fleer or whoever the sous was at the time would be like, what are you doing here? Oh, man, homie's like sick. He doesn't feel good. So I'm just covering for him, right? They all knew what was going on. Like every one of them knew 100% what the real truth was. And then they'd come in, they'd be like, yeah, I just had this like little stomach bug in the morning. And they were like, sure, whatever. Like,
yeah. It was a really cool environment. The only reason why I left there, and that was one of the things when I look back on my career that I regret, was leaving. I was there for about 2 years, but they don't really pay a lot, which is fine. And the attitude was, you're here for the experience. There's 100 other people that want your job, and that's not. I mean, it wasn't really. I don't want to frame it like they would use that as leverage or anything, but that's just kind of the way it was. I mean, it was, John Fleer's hands, he wasn't the one that set the pay scale necessarily, but, I just couldn't afford to work there anymore, really is what it boiled down to. And at the time I was looking for advancement, and John Belichick and I think the AM sous chef was Matt. Neither one of them were going anywhere.
Yeah,
I was like, man, I'm making $750 an hour. I got student loans, That's why I ended up going to Gettysview and doing that, was just for some different opportunities.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I see so many parallels to like the music world. And of course that's my background, but the school thing, even that you mentioned, like I went to school for 8 years just to get an undergrad in jazz drumming, and like, it's not entirely necessary, like what you're saying with culinary school. But even then, like from there, it's sort of like, what do you do? And a lot of gigs and things, I think early on, are just for exposure, where it's kind of like what you're saying about just making $750 an hour and getting the experience. And if you don't get really good from there, you're just going to keep doing that same thing for years.
Yeah, I mean, like on my resume, like no one even looks at my culinary degree.
Really?
I mean, I have one from Walter State Community College.
Yeah.
But flat out, I paid $1,500 for mine. Like that's how much I paid to go to culinary school.
Yeah.
They look at the resume heavy hitters. What'd you say?
I said, you suck. I paid about 30 grand for mine.
Well,
yeah, really.
So like and now, I mean, like CIA, Johnson Wales, it's 100 G's, man. It's $100,000.
It's crazy. Listen to this, not to cut you off, but I got an associate's. I did the 2-year program.
Yeah.
They didn't have a 4 years. They didn't have a bachelor's in culinary when I was there. You could transition over to hotel restaurant management, but I had already managed kitchens and stuff like that and just didn't feel like I needed it. I called them. It's maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I looked into getting my bachelor's online in culinary just because I'd been talking with UT about maybe going full time with them, and you have to have a bachelor's, and they wanted 30 grand to complete my associates to a bachelor's, and I just laughed at him and hung the phone up. I was like, you're absolutely crazy.
First of all, how do you get a culinary degree online? I've yet to figure that one out.
Right.
If anybody can explain it to me, that would be great. So, but I mean, like, and then I talk to these kids, I'm in student ministry and everything, and they're like, yeah, I want to go to culinary school. I'm going to come out and be a chef. And I'm like, first of all, no, you're not. Second of all, you still going to be a dirty, grubby line cook. Yeah. Like, you don't have to start dish now. You get to start as a prep cook. Also, you're going to get 50 cents more an hour, and that's it. Like, you're going to make $12.50 an hour, not $12. Is it worth it, really? I don't think so. And
now I don't think it is now.
No, it was
from a financial standpoint. Yeah, and and I did it because I felt like it would be a good way for me to learn the fundamentals, and I fully realized that. But it was at the time I felt like that was the right route for me to go. And while I was in culinary school, I was working at Magnolia's. There's a place in Summerville, South Carolina called the Woodlands, which is like a 4-star, 4-diamond Relais and Chateau. They were building it when I was in school, and I got a job there. I worked there on Saturday and Sunday in the morning, just doing whatever. The chef was a guy named Ken Vadrinsky. He's still in Charleston. He owns a couple of restaurants now. This guy was bad, man. I mean, he's a wicked chef, and he taught me a lot just working there part time. So, I mean, I was working two jobs, working probably 50 hours a week and going to culinary school all at the same time, just trying to get that experience. And I would go, I'd be in class with kids that were working at Blockbuster Video, or working at non-food related jobs, and they'd be like, "Oh, when I graduate, I'm going to be an executive chef." I'm like, "No, you're not. You're
Hey,
you're
I'm, I'm glad this is
you're
on.
wasting your time."
I'm glad this is on Facebook because I don't know how many people, if we were on a different platform, would know what Blockbuster Video is. I'm
Yeah.
just putting that, like,
Yeah, Instagram or
True,
TikTok,
true.
there's no
Yeah.
Blockbuster, right? Used to be a blue box, looks like a TARDIS. Well, Mark, it's really cool hearing your story. I was also really wanting to ask you, like, what are some of those recipes and what are some of those foods that are good for like gut health and what are good for you? And
Right.
yeah, because I'm really
So
interested in that just personally.
so it's a big rabbit hole, but just to
Sure.
kind of skim the surface, when I really got into looking at gut health and healing my gut to make me feel better, there's diet and then there's digestion. So the digestion aspect of it is a regular regimen of a good clean probiotic and digestive enzymes. I take a probiotic every morning, and I carry around my digestive enzymes with me. And anytime I eat, right before I eat, I take a digestive enzyme. It just helps break down the food.
Mm,
People with autoimmune conditions have a hard time digesting certain things. So even if it's a food that's compliant, my system still needs help digesting stuff. The bacteria levels could be off.
gotcha.
What I had going on was I had a lot of scarring in my digestive system because of the foods I was eating. So I wasn't digesting food properly. There's leaky gut syndrome, which is when things literally physically leak through the lining of your gut into your body. And there are, I'll also say this: there are people that more traditionally Western trained people that will debate this stuff, and that's fine. They can believe what they want to believe. I'm going to believe what I want to believe. So,
Hmm.
there could be some people that would say, "Oh yeah, I mean, my endocrinologist told me that functional medicine was a joke. Diet had nothing to do with it. I might as well burn my money." It got fairly heated. Once he diagnosed me, I went back and saw him one more time. As soon as we started talking about that, I basically was like, "See you later. You're not getting any more of my money.
Yeah.
I'm out of here." And then I transitioned over, and to kind of piggyback on that, when you look at functional medicine versus traditional Western medicine, functional medicine goes after the root cause. And I'm not saying that traditional Western medicine is completely wrong, because I still have my general practitioner. I still need to get antibiotics and
Right.
certain
Right.
things sometimes. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I feel like, a lot of them are still operating on old information and not as open to new information.
Sure. Sure.
So with me, traditional Western medicine was giving me a band-aid where I needed to cure the symptom.
Yeah.
A lot of these pharmaceuticals that they give you, and I still take pharmaceuticals. I take a pill for my thyroid, but a lot of the pharmaceuticals, they give you mask symptoms. They don't cure the symptoms, or they don't get to the root cause. So that's kind of the big difference
Yeah.
with looking at diet and all of this stuff. What I'm trying to do is get to the root cause and manage that process to where I don't have it. So there's the probiotics, there's the digestive enzymes. With the diet, basically, I went on a modified autoimmune paleo protocol. So when I started my diet, and I'm not on it 100% right now, which I need to kind of get back on it
Hmm.
because I've been feeling the effects of it. But for about a year and a half, I was on the autoimmune, it's called the AIP diet, the autoimmune paleo protocol is what I did. And so the big triggers for a lot of people with autoimmune, and this kind of goes across the spectrum, is gluten, grains, soy, dairy. It's a long list. So gluten, grain, soy, dairy, legumes, nightshades, processed foods, all the garbage that's in processed foods, alcohol, caffeine can be hard. That's why I don't drink coffee anymore. Caffeine I love coffee. It's one of the harder things
You're good, man.
that I've had to deal with. But coffee's a twofold because it comes from a bean. Beans are hard to digest, even if it's an extracted liquid form,
Right.
and the caffeine. Every now and then I'll drink a cup of coffee, and it's kind of like rolling the dice. Sometimes it doesn't bother me, sometimes it does.
Yeah.
So, it just kind of depends. So like, all processed foods were off the table. So for over a year, I was very, very strict. And, one of the side effects, which is a good side effect, is weight loss, because you're getting rid of, and kind of the funny thing was, for 7 years, I was the executive chef at UT Medical Center. And part of my job there was teaching classes through the Healthy Living Kitchen. So, and this was pre-diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
So before I was diagnosed, I was teaching classes for celiac patients. I was teaching classes for cancer patients, for diabetes, all of this stuff, teaching how to cook healthy, not realizing that, I was one of those people
Right.
that was having
Wow.
these issues, which was kind of funny. But, with an underactive or inactive thyroid, weight gain is definitely one of the things. Your thyroid is the second computer chip next to your brain that regulates every function in your body. So, I'm 6.5 feet tall. I'm a big dude, but I was always kind of overweight, always carried a little extra. As soon as I went on this diet, I was at 279 pounds, which was normal. My average was usually around 240 or 250. But I stopped taking my thyroid medicine because I was sure that the type of pills I was taking were bad for me. And
Right.
in some ways they were. And I had to switch up to different ones. But when I stopped taking them, I started gaining more weight, getting more inflammation, all that. I went on this diet, and in about a year and 3 months, I went from 279 pounds to 205 pounds.
Dude, he dropped weight like that. Hey,
yeah.
Really quick. Hey, I don't want to stop you in this, but is there a link for what you were talking about? Like the diet, like let's put it in there, because we're going to have a lot of people ask us and not going to know where to send them.
Well, it's not necessarily a link, but you can just go onto Google and Google autoimmune paleo diet or AIP diet. And autoimmune paleo protocol, or just AIP diet. And that's all I did, and stuff just pops up.
Yeah.
It's all
something
over
on healthline.com.
Yeah.
Looks like it gives
And the other thing, and we can just kind of segue away from what I was talking about because there's so much, but I think that so getting the information is great. The biggest thing outside of the physical aspect of it is the mental aspect of it. You gotta think about this. Anybody, and I'm on a lot of social media private groups that are autoimmune related, and it's the same story over and over and over and over. And I was right there with it. You feel like there's something wrong with you. You can't get it diagnosed. People tell you that you just need to be on antidepressants. Nobody's listening to you. The depression, the anxiety, the just, I couldn't even begin to describe, mentally what kind of a state I was in because of this, and feeling like you're the only one that's experiencing this. And then you get it, you start learning about it, you get into these chat groups or these closed Facebook pages, and you find there are thousands of people out there that have the same issue. You start reading their stories, and it's exactly the same over and over and over. I would read stories and be like, this is identical. It's my story. Exactly.
Right.
It's a little different from men. Autoimmune is when you look at who has autoimmune, it's 2 to 1 women to men. So women are much more susceptible than men are. It's kind of funny. So a lot of these groups I'm on, I'm like, I'm the only dude in here, but even the stories that people are telling, it's all the same. So just figuring out that you're not alone in this, and figuring out, learning that you actually have something that's a legitimate thing, that was the biggest relief for me. And, even with my family, as soon as I came home and opened up the computer and I was like, see all these like 21 symptoms? This is everything, you know, the moodiness, this, that, the other. I mean, I was so disengaged from my family and just because I just felt horrible all the time. And just knowing what I had. I mean, even though that day I came home with my diagnosis, I still felt horrible. You know, nothing had changed at that point. Mentally, I was like, all right, you know, I know what it is.
Was it
I
like
know there's a way to work.
finally there's an answer, like there's some validation? Excuse me.
It was probably the most liberating day of my life at that point.
Well, let's not take away from the light at the end of the tunnel, or hey, there is a depression side to this, because we don't shy away from this subject, Mark. Like we've actually talked about it a lot, especially with people being locked in their houses right now, not being able to get out, not feeling like they're alone, and now they may be dealing with this on top of it. And, you know, I mean, honestly, man, you being on here right now may help one person. And that for me is the best thing right now. Being able to say, hey, look, you know, if you're having all these crazy symptoms going on, it might be straight up this issue and you might be able to solve it just diet right now. You know, I mean, I'm not saying totally, like, I'm not saying that. I want to make sure that that's you may want to go get diagnosed. But they may be able to say, you know what, this lines up with what I have. Hey, and I'm not trying to go too far, but like, hey, I didn't think there was a way out. I'm thinking about hurting myself, but why don't I try this first, you know, and be like, yo, here, like, all right, let's replace let's replace grains with sweet potatoes or whatever. Yeah. I'm just throwing out examples of what I actually know about paleo.
Sure. And just, you know, I've got my phone here with the feed up, and Eric Jones put on here, AIP diet, wonder if that would help with psoriasis. The answer is quite possibly. I mean, I'm not going to say yes for sure.
Right.
But, you know, and just, you know, a couple of the issues that I had was rosacea on my face, you know, the redness on the face that you see people have. I had that really bad growing up. I had it really bad, and it got better as I got older, but it was still there. And then I had, you know, I guess it was some kind of psoriasis on my elbows. You know, you see people that have the psoriasis on their elbows, and asthma, really bad asthma. When I went on my AIP diet and was on it strict, all of that went away.
Wow, dude,
that's
awesome.
You know, dude, and I don't know that you have to necessarily be diagnosed with an autoimmune condition for that to happen. Yeah. It's, you know, the bigger thing that I look at is the processed foods. I mean, we are so heavy on processed foods as a culture. And when you read those labels, you know, and when I was on this at first, for about a year, I was on Facebook pretty heavy, and I was on my soapbox a lot about, you know, processed foods and this and that and the other. And I, you know, just to be totally transparent, after about a year and a half, my diet was so strict and so limited that I started developing oral intolerances to the clean food that I was eating, because I was eating so much of the same thing. I mean, I was eating cauliflower by the pounds, and then I started becoming intolerant to cauliflower. So you have to vary your diet. That's the hard part about it. And after a while, you know, an autoimmune paleo protocol diet is an elimination diet.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily meant to be permanent. Some people do it permanently. Not everybody does. So as I started reintroducing things back into my diet, one, you know, because I mean, I was a chef for so many years, I'm missing a lot of food.
They taste
and
good.
I wanted to eat certain things. I mean, like, I don't do gluten at all. You know, I haven't had a drink of alcohol in over 4 years. I haven't had a pizza in over 4 years. But, you know, there were some things that I was like, okay, I'll try this. You know, if it's not gluten or soy, I'm going to try it. And some things I can eat and some things I can't eat. I still get reactions to them. Right. But, you know, as soon as I started loosening up my diet and eating some of these things, my asthma came back a little bit. I went really low carb. Like, I didn't do keto. I think keto is great if you know how to do it right. A lot of people think keto is basically like a carnivore diet, and that's not really the case. It's just like super, 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 like 20 net grams of carbs a day or less, which is hard to do. I mean, 20 net grams of carbs is like a half a potato, if that, you know, a quarter of a banana. And you get carbs out of vegetables. But people that do keto right, it's still a very heavy plant-based diet. It's just high in fat, and you're eating healthy fats. You're eating avocados. You're eating, grass-fed beef. Wild-caught fish, things like that. I didn't even really go down. I tried it for about 2 or 3 weeks, and I couldn't sustain it myself. But when I was doing all that, all of this.
Babies.
Hello?
You there?
Oh, sorry.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here. There was just there was some trauma in the background there for a second.
Oh, mine
But,
as well.
Yeah,
Were we together on the
I
trauma,
think
or
that
is it
was you.
my
I
trauma?
think that was you.
Oh
Your
no,
trauma.
he saw the bottle and was not given the bottle fast enough. Basically, he wanted something without saying it. When he didn't get it, he started yelling about it. And I'm not going to say he inherited that from anybody, but I mean, like, anyway, sorry.
Hey,
It's all right.
Hey,
It's okay.
Jeremy.
We're all there. Mine do the same thing. They're just not.
Hey, listen, Mark, I want to tell you my most impressive kitchen throwing story. Somebody plated fish wrong for like the 5th or 6th time, and I broke a 6-quart Cambro against a wall.
That's hard to do.
What's that?
I said that's hard to do.
What is that
Yeah,
exactly?
it was impressive. It's like Superman Tupperware is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just food storage containers,
Yeah.
polyethylene, polystyrene, things like that. If it had been a Carlisle brand, which was the company I was repping before all this started, it probably wouldn't have broke. But since it was a Cambro,
I get it. I still yet to meet a single human that has broken a Cambro against a wall. So
it's hard to do.
Hey, well,
I intentionally missed his head, though. I do want you to understand that. I did not throw it directly at him.
Hey, to take it more personal and more to the present too, Mark, what kinds of things have you been doing since the Rona has hit? How are you staying sane? How are you staying entertained? And what's going on over there?
Well, so my wife and I are relatively introverts, more her than me, but I'm totally cool staying at home most of the time. I mean, now it's getting to be a little much, but it's still not that bad. We're not overly social people.
Gotcha.
We have our group of friends and all of that. My wife, her and her friends are doing, kind of a social thing on Skype or Zoom or whatever. They get together once a week and sit out on the back porch for an hour and just kind of talk and all of that stuff. For me, a couple of years ago, I picked up kickboxing, which I'm still not sure if that was smart or not to do at 48 years old, but I'm doing it anyway. The place I go has transitioned over to online classes, and my son does it. So I've done a couple of those. I haven't done as much because I haven't been feeling as good lately. But I take my dog out. I live out here in Farragut, kind of in the North Shore, Shoto Road area. So I take my dog when the weather's nice, and I go hit the trails, and we go walking on the trails. I'll get my mountain bike out, and I'll just ride the greenways around here. Some people might see me going down Kingston Pike. I do about a 12-mile loop. I kind of live behind Willow Creek Golf Course back in that area, so I'll go all the way up to Kingston Pike, go down to Kroger, go down Concord Road to Turkey Creek, make a big loop back, do that. Then doing a lot of smoking on the Traeger grill, which has been a lot of fun, and a lot of stuff around the house. I've mulched my flower beds. I pressure washed all the concrete. I pressure washed the house. I repainted a bunch of concrete on the foundation on the back side where the contractors are too cheap to run the siding. So they just put the skim coat on the concrete.
Yeah.
That it all peeled off because my house is a little bit older. So I, did some skim coating and some painting and things like that. Binge watch. We're not talking about Tiger King. Yes, I've seen it. Let's move on. But
Thank you.
I have binge watched 5 seasons of Homeland because I got about halfway into the second season and stopped. So I finished that the other day. I'm now on season 3 of Ozark, which I'd seen the first 2. I just hadn't picked up on it. So yeah, a lot of Netflixing and stuff like that. Hanging out with kids.
Yeah.
Going out and done some stuff with them. And fortunately for me, when this whole thing hit, the company that I was with, they had to lay some of us off.
Yeah.
I got two more paychecks. So I still have one coming, and I have a little bit of savings, not a ton, but that. And then the craziest thing for me was, which was funny, I'd just been on Facebook commenting about this, commenting about that. I put some comment on there about, I got laid off, this, that, and the other. Well, one of my old employees that I used to work with at UT Medical Center, she worked in the kitchen with me, reached out to me and said, "Hey, I heard you got laid off. I've been working for the unemployment office for about 5 years now. Have you filed for unemployment?" And I was like, "Yeah, I filed the other day, but nothing's going to happen until after the 15th because I still got another paycheck coming." And she was like, "Well, I'll pick up your case." So
wow.
that was,
that's awesome.
Just having that, not having to worry about that, because I've had to do unemployment a couple of times in my life, and it's always stressful. You never really know. But she picked it up and she's like, okay, she's just telling me what to do. I'm really holding out on this extra $600 a week to come in. That between that and our savings, we'll be okay for a while.
Yeah.
I'm not, when it first happened, I'm like, I'm not going to sit around. I'm going to go out. I'll go get, to Kroger or somewhere and just get something to do. But,
yeah.
Well, and but the more I thought about it and the more I started, with me having a compromised immune system, the last thing I want to do is get out and expose myself to getting the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And with my asthma, because it's such a big cardiovascular deal, it's not worth the risk for me to do something like that.
Right.
So I'm just kind of riding it.
Not be the best thing, right? I was going to ask about that too, because I went and did a pickup order on Sunday, and I'm going to the Kroger at Cedar Bluff and Kingston Pike over here. Big one, they sell clothes and shoes, which is still really weird to me.
Used to sell couches, by the way.
Used to sell couches. But nobody walking into that store is taking any of this seriously. When I went to do the pickup, just 3 and 4 groups of 3 and 4 people and no masks or anything. I was wondering what that's like out in Farragut where you're riding.
Well, so if you're talking about the greenways, nobody's really wearing any kind of masks or anything, but it's not that crowded.
Gotcha.
And the trails that I go on, I'll run into a couple people here and there, but everybody kind of widens out a little bit and, "Hey, how you doing?" And just kind of tries to get around you real quick and moves on. Now my daughter and I last week went down to Third Creek Greenway down off Sutherland and rode, because she's 9 and she doesn't ride like I do, but we just wanted to get out of the house, and I thought that would be a good place for her to ride. There's not a lot of big hills and long climbs and stuff like that. And when we were down there, it was a lot more crowded. And I saw maybe a third of the people wearing masks. Now, in fairness, I didn't start wearing a mask until about a week ago, but I've not really gone out. If we need to go to the store, I go to the store, and we happen to have a bag of, they're not the N95 or whatever, but it's just kind of your standard mask they give you in a hospital. We had a box of those in the closet left over from a while back. So I just take one of those. I go to the store. I have a little thing of hand sanitizer I put in my pocket. I sanitize my hands when I go in. I sanitize my hands when I come out. Honestly, I think that when you start debating the legitimacy of this and, it's overblown and it's this and it's that, I'm like, well, people are talking about, in Knoxville, well, we're doing too much and we need to open back up the economy. And I'm like, and to me, I'm like, well, we're probably doing a pretty good job, which is maybe why we don't have as many cases as Nashville and Atlanta and places like that are doing. So the people that are saying, this is just a bunch of hype and it's a bunch of hoo-ha and whatever. And, I'm like, well, maybe what we're doing is actually working. But kind of my point of that is, I don't think that. I think that a lot of people aren't taking it as seriously here because the numbers aren't as low, and I feel relatively safe
Yeah.
going out in a very limited capacity to go to the store and stuff like that. I mean, I go to Costco, and they literally have like the hand pump sprayers that you see people like spraying stuff in their yard, and they're lining the carts up at the front door, and they are soaking those carts from one end to the other.
Right.
And they're not, and you have to take one of their sanitized carts. You know, Kroger is not doing that, and I'm not knocking them by any stretch. But they have people out there with little handheld spray bottles. They're kind of doing the same thing. So you know, the thing that concerns me a little bit is the food trucks in the neighborhoods. And I'm not.
Don't get Paul started. Don't get him
Oh,
started.
I know. I've heard him. Now, that being said, you know, I'm not against people having to make a living. You know,
I am not either, but
I'm fortunate enough that we can ride this out for 2 or 3 months if we have to, and I know a lot of people can't do that.
Yeah.
But you know, we've had them in our neighborhood, and we haven't gone. The first one they had here, my neighbor went, and he said that it was just like a mob, and there's just a lot of people standing around not practicing social distancing. Now, when they're coming, a lot of them are, you know, you have to, you know, you text your order in only. You can't come up to the truck. So they're working on all that stuff. But still,
that's because we got a letter from the health department saying we'd be shut down for months, or neighborhoods would be shut down. Like I'm not trying to go off on a tangent on this. I just this is the one thing that baffles my mind. It absolutely baffles my mind. Go to a neighborhood and have everybody gather, kind of thing. And I know not. And listen, I'm going to say 99% of everybody doing it is doing it right. Yeah. But it's that 1% that's causing all these issues and almost the reputation of what's going on in the neighborhoods. It's just why we've chosen not to participate, honestly.
Yeah. I had, oh gosh, Chef's Workshop reached out to me. You know, I know the guy that owns all that, and he sent me a message saying, hey, if you wanted to do a gig or something like that, you could use the trailer. And I was like, man, I appreciate it, but it's not worth the risk for me to get out and even do anything at this point. You know, they're doing stuff in their neighborhood, and that's great. But you know, for me, I'm hunkered down, man. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm the most strict person. You know, I've gone over to my parents to see them, but they've been under quarantine. We've been under quarantine. You know, we're not really doing a whole lot. I mean, I've talked to my neighbor across the street and probably broken the 6-foot protocol, but you know, it's so we're doing, for the most part, we're doing fine. You know, when I'm going to start stressing out is if this goes on for 2 more months and then my savings is gone, and you know, that's when I'm really going to start stressing out. So for right now, I'm just like, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. You know, we're okay for now.
Right.
It's not the best situation to be in, but just ride it out and see what happens. Our health is more important than anything else.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and I've been watching you guys in the morning. So,
yeah. Well, hey, we're
I mean, you know, when you come to the financial side of it, I mean, those stimulus things are coming. Now, granted, it might be a month, but at least it's coming. And, you know, I'm just going to say a 2-parent household with two kids, because I don't know everyone's household. But I mean, like when you're looking at $2,400 extra plus 6, I think it's what? How much is it per kid? Like
kid, 4,
500 per kid.
So, like $3,400.
So you're looking at $3,400, and then if individuals are really getting the extra $600 plus the $275, you're looking at $875 a week, and all those things. I mean, honestly, there's a lot of people that are going to get unemployment and actually probably make more money than they were if they were actually going to work during these times right now. Which I understand the thought process and the economy and building it back up and not letting it dip down. And I get all those things. You know, I'm not, you know, but for individuals that have mortgages and car payments and debt they have to pay off and legitimate things that are monthly bills, they are on their way. I'm saying that it's on its way. I want to believe wholeheartedly that it is coming. So if you'll give me
Well,
just a moment to snap at my
yeah,
children.
Somebody,
it's supposed to be on its way. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and that's I've been talking with my friend who's handling my unemployment for me, and
right.
and they've not been given a directive on the additional $600 a week yet. But I was reading last night that I think that's going to start rolling out over the next 2 to 3 weeks. But she told me that they have not heard anything as of right now. Don't know when that extra stimulus check is coming. Um, again, for me, I can pay my bills for a little while
Hmm.
because I had some savings, but there's a lot of people out there,
Yeah.
that don't. But I'm crossing my fingers that in 6 to 8 weeks this thing is going to be over. If it drags on past that, you're going to see a lot of real financial hardship and bankruptcies from people because
Yeah.
I have my mortgage through Chase Bank, and they sent me a thing saying that I could defer my payments for 3 months, and I had everything set up on auto pay. I'm like, okay, this is great, so I went ahead and did it. Well, then I start digging into it a little bit deeper, and yeah, they let you defer it for 90 days, but at the end of that 90
You
days,
got to
you got
pay
to pay all
all
three
of it,
months
right?
plus the
See,
month that you're
that
in, which
I,
is so
I
I'm just like, I'm just gonna pay my
Well,
mortgage. I mean,
BB
if I run, I'll just wait till I run out of money.
BB&T sent a similar thing to us, and then they put something really cool within that. They're basically just saying, like, we know that this is hard. You probably aren't going to be able to pay all of it at once, so we can like redo your mortgage and everything. So I know that that's possible. It's probably possible with most companies, but like that's so much work and so much paperwork,
that's
and I know that's going to
Yeah,
scare people away from it
that's
sometimes,
that
but
yeah, that's just
yeah,
so hard.
yeah.
yeah, it's insane. I'm not going to go off on a tangent about that,
Yeah.
but as soon as I found that, I was like, I'm not going to get caught on the back end. I mean, I just went ahead and made my mortgage payment,
Yeah.
and that's what we talked about. It's like, look, we're not spending a lot of money.
Hmm.
When I was working, I was burning through 2, 3 tanks of gas a week. I drove so much. I filled up my car like 3 weeks ago, and I've still got about a half a
Same.
tank.
Yeah. Mine's
And it
still
only
full.
costs $1.60 a gallon. So
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, it's I mean, it is what it is.
Man, on
But
that note, real quick, I was going to give a quick shout out to Born and Raised Productions. They're doing a podcast right now, and they recently had a guy named Oslo on who was talking through unemployment for musicians and people in the entertainment industry. So if you're in that position and if you've lost like, 20 gigs this month, go and check out that podcast because it's some really helpful information if you're in that situation.
hey, let's shift it positive real quick. What are you looking forward to the most when the gates are lifted and we're allowed to just run out into the public and sneeze on each other again? Like where are we at? What are you looking forward to the most, Mark?
going back to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly,
Somebody say
that's
something in the background there.
hopefully with the company that I've been with, which is certainly a possibility. If not, they're actually my we had multiple principal owners with that company. The one that I directly reported to, he's trying to help me, gain some other employment. So they're helping out with that. I just want to go back to work. I mean, again, we're not super social. I mean, I'd like to go hang out with our friends, like get the kids out of the house,
Yeah.
things like that. But I just want to be working. That's all I want to be
I've
doing.
heard that from a lot of people
I'll be
about the
happy.
kids. Let's get them back out of the house.
Yeah. We're actually currently um I'm planning it. I'm gonna test her and make sure she closes her ears, but I've kind of told her about it already. But we're fortunate to have an older one who's going to babysit the kids, and hopefully we don't get questioned by the police when we do this. But I think I'm going to like get dinner or make dinner, and then like turn the back of our van and put like pillows and like comforter and stuff back there, and actually put in a movie and just go somewhere and watch a movie in the van in silence, or just sit in it and play on our phones and not have anyone bother us. So, no, I just like, it, I just want to, I just want to get out. Like, I just really want to get out. Like, I want to talk to random people in the grocery store line is probably what I want to do the most. So,
Yeah, I want
That's the last thing I want to do.
That's hilarious.
are you a self-checkout person, Mark?
No, well, it depends on how many items I have. There's a break there. Now, I certainly am a believer that self checkout is hurting the labor force, and especially when the grocery stores doubled the amount of self checkout, I felt like that was not the right thing to do. So I will try to go through the regular checkout, and I do have that part of my brain that's like, I don't work here, I shouldn't have to do this kind of a thing. But I will say that the greatest self checkout was at Costco when they put them in Costco. Because when I go to Costco, I buy like 6 or 8 things. I buy the 90% of what I buy at Costco is my animal proteins, because it's the cheapest place to get them out here. Unless I'm buying from a local source. And I don't drink soda anymore, so I drink a lot of Perrier, San Pellegrino. So I buy that there in bulk because it's a lot cheaper than the grocery store. And I do buy some clothes there depending on what they have going on. But literally, I'm standing behind people that have like 30, 40, 50, 60 items and have to wait on them. When they hit that self checkout, I'm like, I'll take it. What are you, the 40, 50, 60 items?
No, not at all. I shop at, now, not to use the competitor, but I use Sam's for work. That's where we get a lot of our like bulk items, like our seasoning, like a lot of our seasonings, a lot of our, like our plasticware, and some other stuff like tortillas. And I could go through a line if you wanted to.
Stoke Coffee.
Yes, there you go. Stoke Coffee. They're a wonderful brand.
Not a sponsor yet.
Not a sponsor yet, but they're unsweetened is excellent. We've decided to start our own commercials for companies that don't sponsor us, just in the hopes that they will give us money one day. No, but I have been there so many times that I know how to put everything in the cart like they want it. So they just like pull out and just scan barcodes. So I can get in and out of a line in, like it takes me about 3 minutes to ring up between $300 and $800 worth of stuff at Sam's. Costco is a totally different beast. We don't buy that many things there. I like them more for home.
Yeah.
I think they have great selections on a lot of items, especially like you said, their proteins. Their proteins are legit. Their seafood section is amazing. I've kind of formed a relationship with one of their butchers there, and he's pretty cool about making sure that, like he's like, hey, I got something better, not something necessarily better in the back, but hey, I know you like this certain fat content with your rib loin, and here, let me go get it for you, and all of those. So it's good to have those relationships with vendors. I mean, we talk a lot as chefs, having a good relationship with your vendor, and because they know how to select out and get the quote unquote better things, because there really are better things. It's that important as a human, just shopping for your house, to do that as well, because you're able to go to your butcher and call them by name and say, hey, look, I'm really looking for this specific thing next Thursday night, right? They'll be sure to get it for you, especially local local grocery stores. I'm going to throw out a local grocery store like Butler and Bailey. Yeah. They are like, if you go talk to their butchers and you're like, hey, next week I'm having XYZ over, or I'm trying to do something nice for my wife, or anything like that, they will actually hold things back for you, and they're really, really cool about doing stuff like that.
Yeah, those guys do a great job. And Paul, you probably know this. I need to find some beef ribs. I want to smoke some beef ribs on the Traeger
I got
really
you.
badly.
I got you.
Okay.
So
Just let me know.
Magnolia Meat Provisions. We'll take care of you. So
Okay.
so
And you can buy off the street.
What's that?
You can buy off the street. You don't have to have an account.
Yeah, you don't have to have an account at all with them anymore. You can go just buy retail from them. I mean, you got to call it in. I know they're probably unlimited limited things. If Eric is watching, or Mark, you may know this as well. They have great relationships with a lot of farms as well. Like Four Corners Ranch she's really cool.
Yeah. I know Kimberly well. I was using a lot of their stuff when we were doing the meal prep thing, but I've got about 10 pounds of her ground beef in my freezer now that I'm slowly going through.
Yeah, I didn't know if she might have some beef ribs held out or anything.
Man, this podcast always makes me so hungry, like first thing in the morning. For meat, though.
They look like Flintstone chops, man. I love how they look. So you like the Traeger? So do you like the Traeger because it's auto feed and you don't have to like manually?
Yes. I'm lazy.
Have you noticed any flavor change from Traeger and just using actual normal, like old school smoke?
It's the Traeger.
Not like you. Yeah. I'm not trying to be this way. Not like you and I would taste, but like, not saying novice, but every.
Yeah.
Like I
so
fish cut with metal knife. So like, I mean, like, so.
So the thing with the Traeger is it's more about the amount of smoke. That's where the change can be. A Traeger, a pellet grill doesn't really necessarily smoke as heavy as a stick burner is going to, or if you're doing chips on open coals. The whole reason why I went down the Traeger route is because, a lot of people are like, oh, the whole fun of smoking is, sitting out drinking beer all day and watching the food smoke. Well, that doesn't entice me one bit. I don't want to do that. That's the main reason why I didn't really smoke a lot of stuff. So for me, it's more about the convenience and the consistency, but the one thing that I did to kind of offset that is I got, I got a bag of hickory pellets and then I got a bag of mesquite pellets. And so when I'm doing my regular smoking, because the first couple of rounds I did just hickory and it was good, but I wanted it a little bit more smoky. So I cut half hickory, half mesquite for most everything I'm doing. And that kind of gives it a little bit more of a smoky flavor. Now, when I've done a couple of briskets on there.
Yeah.
And I go 100% mesquite. I mean, I like Texas style brisket. I don't, Texas style brisket it's not just salt and pepper and optional garlic powder. If you're not smoking with mesquite, you're not doing Texas style brisket as far as I'm concerned. Other people may have a different opinion, but it makes a big difference on the flavor, and I did one. I just did this last one. I did it for 14 hours, man. I mean, I put a picture of it on Facebook, a little video, and you could just poke it and it was just like,
I saw that thing moving.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
I've got like,
I was just going to say you all have to stop because I'm about to go eat something that's not actually that. So you're killing me.
The fun things about brisket is it's two pieces of meat that cook at different temperatures and cook different ways, and you've got to make them. People that do brisket perfect amaze me. I will eat your food all the time.
It's kind of like creme brulee. Creme brulee is about 4 ingredients. But it's really hard for people to get it right. It's all it is the technique. It's time, temperature, patience. I mean, my first brisket I ever did was horrible, but now I've got it down.
Nice. Well,
I was thinking about doing that for a video later this week. So you're welcome.
Do it. Everybody tune in to
no creme brulee, not the brisket.
The old Paul Moody live cooking show. Well, Mark, thanks so much for coming on. We're gonna wrap things up here, and any last thoughts for anybody listening?
Yeah, if you have chronic undiagnosed issues, if you have skin issues, different things going on, chronic fatigue, whatever it may be, aches and pains that you don't know what's going on, you probably have something going on with an autoimmune condition, and just understand that there are lots of other people out there that are in the same boat as you are. Go to your doctors, go to an endocrinologist. If that doesn't get you fixed and you want to take a look into functional medicine, it's out there, and there are definitely ways to improve your quality of life, but it takes a lot of hard work and it takes a lot of determination.
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. I did just want to plug the Patreon one more time. We're taking some donations to our site. I'll post it again, and half of all that is going to go to Second Harvest Food Bank too. So, Mark, thanks so much for coming on. This was a blast.
Thank you.
All right.
Sure.
See y'all tomorrow.